Alright guys, so today we want to chop it up about kind of a sensitive topic, and that's what they would call learning disabilities. But I actually don't really necessarily view it as a learning disability. I just look at it as a different style of learning. And just a personal, story of mine is that when I was in the 6th grade, I was put into special ed. And if you guys know anything about special ed, it's, looked at as where, maybe the slower kids are put into classes. And a lot of times what ends up happening to these children who get put into these special ed systems is that they actually end up going into the penitentiary system later on in life. I think there's like a crazy correlation between, the penitentiary system and special ed students. It might be like a 90% correlation or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what the exact statistics are. But when I was placed in this special ed, I was in the 98th percentile of actual performance, or not in terms of performance, but 98th percentile of ability. But my performance was extremely low, and my grades were down. I couldn't focus in class, and I actually learned very visually and tactile. And in the education system, typically in America, there's a lot of speaking, and there's just different methods of learning, and whatever it wasn't conducive for my learning style. And for those of you guys who are out there maybe still in the education system, or those of you guys who are out there trying to learn something, maybe it might be calisthenics, it might be, you might be in college trying to learn something, or you might just be trying to teach yourself something. Don't get down on yourself because you don't learn the same way that everybody else does. I think James actually had, a similar type of story, or, similar experience that he wanted to share as well.
Yeah, when I was in school, I just remember it being an absolute hell sitting there and trying to sit still. I remember I used to be ripping all of my pens apart. I was just tearing everything apart because I had all this energy inside me and I like to be active. And I learned a lot more about myself later in life, that my style is more of that of a sprinter. I like to go at something aggressively hard, and then I like to relax, and then I like to find something, and I like to go super fast. So the faster something I'm learning, the more focused I can be. But if something's too slow for me, I just zone out and I don't absorb anything. And so what happened is, when I was in school trying to learn subjects, I couldn't absorb anything the teacher was saying. I literally would go in one ear and out the other. And recently I decided, I want to go back to school. I'm going to study computer science, and I'm going to test out a bunch of classes. And involved in that is going to be learning the first couple years of math. And when I left school, the highest class I had taken was geometry. And I think I had a 70 in that. And then once I started self-studying math and actually putting my same fitness ideas of how I learned fitness, and I started applying that to math, I learned about 3 years worth of math in about 2.5 months. And what my strategy was is I would actually I would look at the chapter, if it's chapter 1, I would look up the topic, then I would go to YouTube, and I would find 5 or 6 different teachers, and then I would put their lecture on 2 times speed, and I would watch the exact same subject but described by a different person 5 different times and on sped up. And what this did, it kept me engaged. And if I didn't like the teacher's personality, honestly, there's some people I don't like how you talk, I don't want to hear it, so I just closed them off and I put on another one. And you'll notice with that new stimulus, you start absorbing the information 10 times as fast, and there's so one person might tell you something, you're like, I don't know what the heck they just told me, and then another person says, you're like, oh duh, that's so obvious, I don't know how I didn't get that. And this actually reminds me of David Goggins. I'm a big fan of his, and he talked about how he has a learning disability, and he talks about, for him, he had to get the dive manual. He had acquired a year in advance, so he would write down the same page 10 times over, and he did that front to back. For me, that is the absolutely worst thing I could do. I do not have that level of focus, but for him, he was just having trouble grasping the information, but his focus, so he's using his strength. He has that solid focus, and then he transitioned that into learning the skill by using what he was good at. For me, I have a different kind of I have the exact opposite, where my concentration can be terrible at times, but I can learn things very fast if they're presented by the right person. So it's kind of like how we were talking about the plant analogies earlier, about some plants need a lot of sunlight, a lot of water, some need shade, some need a lot of potassium or nitrogen. Find out your recipe for learning and then hit that hard.
Yeah. So, and before we exit, I just want to speak on just learning in general and how we all have different learning styles. But the thing is that we all have the ability to unlock whatever information, whatever skill, whatever realm that we want to dive into. And I think it's the most important aspect of learning is find the learning style that allows you to get into that flow state, to the point where you almost forget that you're in the process of studying. You almost forget that you're in the process of reading. You almost forget that you're in the process of watching this informative video because you're immersed in it. And I think, it's easy to get into a flow state when it comes to, physical activities, because your endorphins kick in, and, there's all these physical factors, but we can also get into that same state when it comes down to learning as well. So you need to kind of toy around with some things. See if you like reading books, or see if you like listening to audio books. See if you like actually putting puzzles together. All these things can kind of be little indicators that can kind of help you out in terms of your growth journey, in terms of education, whether that's learning a skill, whether that's learning a trade, or whether it's just taking your passions to the next level. And do not get discouraged. That's the main thing. Don't get discouraged. If somebody calls you stupid, don't listen to them. Do not listen to them. Being put into a special ed system when you're in the 6th grade can do a lot to your confidence as far as what you think that you can achieve on an educational or just on a knowledge-based level. You know what I mean? And that's what's happening to a lot of kids nowadays. And it might have happened to you too. Or it might have happened to you when you were in high school. Or maybe, you might have found out that you have a learning disability once you got into college. Don't look at these things as disabilities, because they're not disabilities. They're just different ways that are a little bit out of the norm. And I like to look at it as, the fact that you're not learning things the way that everybody else is learning things, that might be an advantage in the long run, because everybody else is coming at things in this angle, right? Because that's the way that they learn. That's the way that the mainstream educational system is teaching them. But guess what? You're coming at them from this angle. You might be coming at them from this angle, or you might be meeting them head on. And the knowledge and your force that you might be generating might be way stronger than anything that's coming from that mainstream education system. One thing I've noticed about people who get caught up into a group mentality, whether that's group think, group learning, group identification, they get comfortable. But when you're not in that group and you have to do things, outside of the lines, you have to do things outside of the norm, you're outside of your comfort zone anyway. So you're the one who's actually growing rapidly, because you're the one who's experiencing those growth pains. These people they're just going in a straight line trajectory, and they're just kind of learning things, and they're not even really they're just zoned out. But you're out of that comfort zone. You're growing rapidly. You might be taking steps, like deep steps down, but then you might be exploding up. So you're the one who's getting all the right type of experience. This is real life experience. Our trials and tribulations don't do anything but make us stronger. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when it comes down to learning disabilities. And I think this video is actually just going to be directly, geared towards people who've kind of experienced this and people who are going through this. I know there's a lot of kids nowadays who have like ADD, or what they call ADHD, or all these different quote-unquote learning disabilities that can actually be used as an asset. But anyways, guys, I want you guys to stay positive. Keep your mind focused on your goals. Keep your mind focused on your dreams, and figure out ways that you can learn and get into that flow state. Anything else before we sign out?
You can switch from asking yourself if something's possible and switch it to just how can I make this happen. Then you start thinking about the strategies to reach your goal, instead of even having that conversation of whether or not I'm even capable in the first place. And I think that little switch can help a lot of people out. But thanks for checking out our channel. Hit us up, highoctanecalisthenics.com, High Octane Calisthenics YouTube,
at High Octane Calisthenics on Instagram. Anyways, guys, holler at us. We'll get back at you. Everybody stay positive out there. We appreciate you guys for checking out the video. Hope everybody's having a great day. Peace.